My name is Linda Lee Cadwell, and I was married to Bruce Lee. We were married for 9 years, from 1964 until his untimely death on July 20th, 1973. He had been eagerly anticipating the premiere of Enter the Dragon, which was to take place at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood in August of 1973. Unfortunately, he did not get to attend that gala event. However, he did get to see the final version of Enter the Dragon, and all his work had been completed on it, and he loved it. Between the time of his death in July and the premiere in August, there were some scenes that were cut from the film, particularly in the philosophical areas. He had a goal in mind. He knew what he wanted to communicate martial arts-wise, philosophically-wise through this film, and he was very determined to make his dream part of this movie. Those scenes have been restored in this revised version, this uncut version, and it is very fortunate that many viewers will be introduced to Enter the Dragon and to Bruce in the version that he loved the most. Bruce would be most proud to say, and to have people say about him, that he was a real human being. He was vibrant and he was full of life, and he was the real thing. So today, when you are watching this version of Enter the Dragon, I hope you will think of Bruce watching it way back in July of '73, and perhaps imagine him sitting next to you, watching it, enjoying every moment of it in the full version as he intended it to be shown. When Bruce taught Kung Fu, he did teach in small classes or one-on-one. He had dreamed, when I first met him in the early '60s, of having chains of schools across the country and teaching masses of people Chinese Kung Fu, which of course incorporates his beloved Chinese philosophy. As he proceeded to open a school in Seattle and then another in Oakland and a third in Los Angeles, he began to realize that this art was not something that could be taught on a mass scale. It had to be one-on-one or in very small groups in order to be not just taught by rigid set rules, which he opposed in the teaching of his Kung Fu and philosophy. It had to be suited to the individual, and the individual had to be able to take in and what he had to teach them and then grow individually from there. So he came to realize that his art could not be taught that way on a mass scale. And so he abandoned the idea of starting chains of Kung Fu schools and having assistant instructors in various locations all over the country, and instead continued to teach martial arts, Chinese Kung Fu, which by that time he had developed his own way and called Jeet Kune Do. He abandoned the idea of teaching that on a mass scale, continued to teach it one-on-one or in small groups, but changed his dream, you might say, of the way that he would translate and impart the message of his beautiful Chinese culture to the world. And this he would do through the vehicle of film. He was planting the seed always for years prior to even going to Hong Kong, because he knew the producer Fred Weintraub, he knew the executive producer Ted Ashley, knew them well and intimately and on a one-to-one basis as far as teaching martial arts to them. So they were friends and students of Bruce's. So he was involved in every aspect from the very beginning of planning it, doing all the contractual things, making the arrangements for the people to come to Hong Kong for the production and everything, and very much involved in the writing of the script. Of course, there was a script that the first title of which was Blood and Steel, and it underwent numerous revisions by Bruce. He added a great deal of dialogue and scene changes because he knew what he wanted to produce here. And there was reluctance and tug of war going on about exactly how the product would end up, how the script would end up. But Bruce was very insistent, almost to the point of being difficult to work with, because he knew exactly what he wanted and he insisted on what he needed. Not to say he was bullheaded and wouldn't compromise on things. That's not the impression I want to give. The impression I want to give is that he had a goal in mind. He knew what he wanted to communicate, martial arts wise, philosophically wise, through this film, and he was very determined to make his dream part of this movie, which I think is another reason why it has endured all these years. So he had a very active part in the writing of the script. He did, of course, choreograph all the fight scenes, and he was the best in the world at doing that. He had a film sense about how things would look on film, and he was exacting with his stunt people and the other actors that were in fight scenes with him. Nobody worked harder on Enter the Dragon than Bruce did. There were a couple of incidents that happened during the filming of Enter the Dragon that perhaps are not evident to the viewer because it's all pieced together nicely. But just for instance, so that you'll know when you see these films on camera, there is a scene where Bruce interacts with a cobra snake. And I don't know personally how he could ever do that, because I could not even be present on the set when this was happening. But and as you'll see in the film, this is a very large, ugly snake. And Bruce has to step on its tail and capture it by the head in order to subdue it. Well, in the finished version, you'll see everything went just fine and smoothly, and he does that with no problem. But that really wasn't the case during the filming. The snake was also somewhat angry because of all the runs he had been put through, and so this snake actually got quite nasty with Bruce and did in fact bite him. And it was painful, however, not deadly, because in fact the venom had been removed from this cobra, thank heavens, or the film may never have been finished. So, on another occasion, there is a fight scene you'll see in the movie where Bruce is fighting with Bob Wall, and this scene takes place in this vast courtyard with many martial artists dressed in white, which you will recognize in the film. And Bruce and Bob Wall are having this fight where Bob has a broken bottle in his hand. And in Hong Kong, they did not have the kind of breakaway props that they would have had in Hollywood. So this was a real broken glass bottle. And they're having this fight, and they had it carefully choreographed, who does what. And there was a slip-up during the filming of it, and consequently, one person didn't do what they were supposed to do. And consequently, Bruce's hand was severely cut across this tendon between the thumb and the forefinger. And filming had to stop, and it stopped for several days there. And Bruce had to have stitches, and his hand was all bandaged and swollen up. So that did put a stop to the film for a few days there. There was one extra on the set who I guess thought he would just see if Bruce was really a martial artist or was just an actor who was faking it. And he, between takes, when the extras are sitting around, standing around, and Bruce had a little time on his hands, one of these extras was goading Bruce all the time, like teasing him, like saying, you know, you're not any big stuff. I bet you can't do a sidekick and da-da-da. And normally this kind of thing did not faze Bruce at all because he had evolved to that stage of being a martial artist that did not need to prove himself to every person that came along issuing a challenge or teasing him or picking on him or anything. So he did not always feel the need to react in the way that the person would be hoping that he would. But on this occasion, and I happened to be there on the set that day, and on this occasion, this kid was trying to show Bruce up and say he was a paper tiger. And Bruce felt that it had reached the point where if he did nothing and said nothing, he would not be able to inspire the rest of the extras to cooperate with him in the fight scenes and do what they needed to do to complete the movie. So he felt he needed to take a leadership role and to show this young man that he was going to have to eat his words. So, but he did it in a nice and playful way, and he called the guy down from where he was sitting up on a wall, throwing jibes at Bruce, and he said, hey, come on down here, you know. So he brought him down, and in the martial arts vernacular, I guess you would say he played with the young man. And he said, you know, they got in a stance, and he said, okay, go ahead, you know, try and throw a kick. Anyway, they had a little back and forth there, and by the time it was over, in about 30 seconds' time, the young man was a true believer, and Bruce accomplished this in good nature, did not hurt the young man, but certainly showed him that he was a true martial artist and very skilled and knowledgeable. So everything went smoothly after that.